arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
Hello and welcome to the Bad Taste Crime Podcast. I'm Vicky.
I'm Rachel.
We're back again.
Back.
Rachel's back again.
Hi.
Oh my gosh. I'm actually really excited for today's episode.
I'm sure you are. I'm nervous. My hands are sweating.
It'll be all good.
They're damp.
If this is your first time listening, a special hello to you.
Hi.
Hello.
We love you.
Welcome.
Yeah, come on in.
This is kind of an interesting one to come in on. I'm going to be honest. It's kind of interesting to come in on.
We're judging you. Just a little.
But before we get to that, let's head over to the newsroom.
Fit to breathe, our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad.
So this week, our news comes from DeKalb County, Alabama, where a woman, 69-year-old Martha Jane Bowes, was arrested for stealing floral arrangements from a bunch of graves. Is this what you thought it was?
No.
I didn't think so.
We were saying before, I'm like, oh, I know which one you
Nope,
mean.
you
I
don't.
confused the story.
Yeah, so police got reports of somebody like stealing stuff off of graves May 16th.
My birthday?
Is that your birthday?
Yes. Oh my God.
Was this you?
It was. I'm Martha.
I'm Martha. No, so she, the people who had the stuff stolen off the grave decided to set up a camera to watch.
They doorbelled the grave?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And they caught her stealing more arrangements. They were like handmade floral arrangements.
God.
And as you know, like a lot of times floral arrangements on graves are synthetic, fake,
right?
You know, whatever,
so
that they
last longer.
Yeah.
Right.
So they went to go to her house and search it, and they found all of these floral arrangements. Some that were reported, some that were not reported. They called her to like bring her in. She was like, I'm not there. But then it turns out she was just in a different part of Alabama. They go and arrest her.
Probably in another cemetery.
Stealing
more flowers.
No, it was at a different house. But I don't know what she did before that. So just saying. So anyway, so she was arrested. She got 2 extra charges of failure to appear from other outstanding warrants.
Oh.
She was arrested for
grand
desecration,
floral larceny,
theft of property, and desecration of a gravesite.
Oh my wow.
So
what did she say? Like, for what?
No. Or at least it doesn't say in this article,
like,
but
why? Like, I don't understand.
Maybe, I mean, you could take them and resell them, I guess.
Online
guess, or
but
something.
They're really not, like, I don't think those are expensive. Like, I kind of wonder if she's just like a bitch.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
you can get really cheap ones from Michael's for like
$5
to $10.
Love Michael's.
Yeah.
Sponsor us.
Yeah. You just want to sit around and craft all day.
I do.
Yes.
I really do. I'll make floral arrangements.
There you go.
I'm gonna mail them to Martha
with
in
secret
jail.
cameras hidden in them.
Yeah. Oh my God.
There's the market.
GoPro.
You could double in like ghost hunting. Just saying.
Get out of my head. Have you been reading my diary? It's like my dream profession. Besides this, of course.
So that's that. We're going to move on to
Free Martha.
Netflix and Kill, which this week is a Max and Kill, because we are going to talk about the Jinx, the life and deaths of Robert Durst, part 2. As we record this, the final episode is just about to air. It hasn't quite aired yet.
Dun, dun, dun.
Have you been watching it? Not watching it?
No,
Okay.
I've been saving it.
Okay. Okay, that's totally fair. I won't spoil too much. Have you watched the first season?
Well, no, I have not.
Okay.
My husband just got into like true crime documentaries, so I'm
Okay.
trying to save a lot of the like big ones for him because it's just such an interesting case.
So the first one came out about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
The first series.
Yeah.
And this was before we started doing the podcast. And this particular case kind of got me watching a bunch of like true crime documentaries. This was like my entry into the documentary space.
Got a place
years
in
ago.
your heart.
It does. It really does. So for those of you who are not familiar, Robert Durst is a real estate heir from New York. He was accused and acquitted of murdering Robert Black, I believe his name is, in Galveston, Texas. His wife mysteriously disappeared, Kathy Durst, and he's kind of suspected in the disappearance. And then like later on, his best friend and confidant, Susan Berman, was shot in her home. And that was an unsolved murder.
Boy, this guy is just unlucky.
Very unlucky. The jinx. Got a jinx, right? So the first part of it sort of, at that point, he had only been tried for the Black murder in Galveston, Texas, and acquitted, like I said.
Right.
He did admit to dismembering the body, which is a twist. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but we'll
do that sometimes.
Yeah. So that was the only one that they had ever like brought him to trial on at the time of the first part of the documentary. Okay. And then there's the hot mic moment at the end where he,
oh my God.
have you seen I'm sure you've
Killed
seen
them
the
all,
clip of
of
that.
course.
Yeah. The 5 words that changed everything as they've marketed it. Following that,
What an idiot.
So part 2 basically picks up where that left off. And it starts with the detective who was like watching the series and decided that he was going to start investigating these cases with some of the new evidence that the directors had pulled and start looking into Robert Durst.
See, this case inspires everyone. It helped
Yes.
inspire you. It inspires the detective.
So they start looking into it. They go to arrest him. He's found in New Orleans. I remember the news of him being arrested coming out. He basically like secretly fled the city and like goes to New Orleans and is living under a false identity and gets arrested and sent to jail. And so this covers basically his arrest, the trial for Susan Berman's murder.
Okay. Which was his friend.
Which was his friend.
Right.
Which is very interesting because they have a ton of trial footage from that in the documentary.
The best.
It also, I'm not sure what's going to be in this last episode. It pretty much covers the trial of Susan Berman because shortly after that, he died. He's dead. now.
Right.
Spoiler. He's dead. He's dead. He was like wickedly
Yeah, he
frail
was very
to
old.
begin with.
Yeah.
And they talk about him shaving his heads because you could see the head. You could see the stent in his head. I think it's a stent that goes in your head.
Yeah. Like a little like tube.
Whatever. Yeah.
Did he have to have like brain surgery? Or
Yeah,
something?
at some point. And there's like a huge like scar that you can
Ew.
see from it. So it's like sympathy, right? But he, even without
As
that,
I'm like, ew,
yeah,
gross.
even without that, he looked incredibly frail.
Yeah.
Anyway, so part 2 kind of covers that. I'm sure I have a little nostalgia hole for
Nostalgia
this.
bias.
But I am really enjoying it.
I'm so excited.
I'm really enjoying it. I have talked to people who are like, I don't necessarily feel like this needed to be made. And I'll tell you, like the people who worked on this, some of the people, Andrew Jarecki and I'm pretty sure Mark Smurl, I think is his name. They both have been working on other projects also in the meantime. Like they do a couple of podcasts, and other documentaries.
Well,
and all
I mean,
this
it's
other stuff.
been so long.
Right, exactly. So this isn't like the only thing that they've been working on. But
Right.
there are people who are like, yeah, I don't really, it hasn't really been that interesting. I don't really feel like it was a thing that needed to be made necessarily.
It
I've
sounds
heard
like
a little
it's
bit of
still
that.
worth watching, especially with all the like the trial footage. Like that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and they have access, like because they filmed that first one, they have access to like these people involved directly in the
Right.
case.
Oh, yeah. They already have those connections.
Right. And like people that Bob Durst was communicating with from jail, or like these friends of his that are now coming forward, or investigators
gonna
in the
watch
case
it.
or whatever. Like they do kind of have that access. So like,
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. I'm very much looking forward to watching the final episode. I'm going to be sad that it's over. But
know.
Also also glad because like it's
Right.
over.
Right.
But anyway, it's a little sad because we still haven't really gotten any answers about what happened to Kathy Durst.
Yeah.
So that's the one like question mark in the whole deal.
That's
unfortunately.
true. Oh, that is sad.
Yeah. But it's the documentary itself, I think, is really good. If you haven't watched it, if you haven't watched part 1, you definitely should.
And that new episode's like about to come out.
It comes out tonight.
Oh.
Tonight.
That's
is
so
the last.
exciting.
I'm like, what day of the week it is it? I have no
By
idea.
the time you're listening, it'll already be out.
It'll be out. We haven't watched it yet, but I expect it's going to be good.
So good.
Super good.
That's our prediction. We'll check back with you. If it sucks, we'll let you know.
This is that part of the show where we say content might not be appropriate for all listeners.
Yeah.
In this case, honestly, it's pretty fine.
Yeah, mine too.
But the one thing I will say is if you are like a vegetarian or vegan and maybe you don't want to hear about meat production, that would be my warning.
That's specific.
It's very specific.
Oh my God.
But some of them are kind of sensitive.
That's
So-
true. That's
Just
true.
in case.
We love you.
We love you anyway, but like just
And we
in case.
love that you love broccoli. We are all about that. for
I
you.
love broccoli, but I also love a cheeseburger
Oh, me too.
and bacon.
I couldn't live without steak. That's mine. Oh my God.
Yeah, hopefully they dipped out by now. So we're just talking about delicious steak and bacon.
I've already unsubscribed.
This week is a very fun and special episode for me because we are covering corporate crime.
Your favy.
Yeah, as longtime listeners of the show will know, white collar crime, corporate crime is like
You are all about
chef's
that
kiss.
shit.
It's
Yeah.
so good, but I kind of did this on purpose because I know it's not everybody's thing, right?
Yeah.
I know it's not necessarily your thing. I'm not trying to call you out or anything.
No, I'm
it's not.
gonna-
It
Yeah.
is very tough to understand sometimes.
That's my issue. I'd
I'm
like
not-
it if I were smarter.
No, you are smart, but corporate things and financial things are like way trickier.
Yeah.
way trickier
For sure.
But the more you research them, the more you know.
That's true.
The more you learn. So I was curious to see what you would do.
Yeah.
With a like white collar crime
I
episode.
hope
'cause
you
we've
like
been
the one I
pretty
picked.
murdery so far.
Right.
This one, not as much.
Yeah.
not as much murder.
Yeah.
Tons of corporate bullshittery though.
Right.
So I am going to start off. This story is coming from the island of Japan.
Okay.
So let me apologize in advance because a lot of the articles were in Japanese and were translated over. Okay. And some of these like Japanese names and terms and things I might fumble through, but
We are Midwestern girls. Be patient with us.
we're going to get there in the end. Yeah. So, starting on the island of Japan, it begins with a man named Minoru. See, it already starts. Minoru Tanaka. After leaving junior high, Tanaka began working for a meat provider,
Okay.
working his way up the corporate ladder.
Okay.
Okay. After a few years there, he decided to leave and he founds his own company called Meat Hope. Which makes me honestly think of Lemon Hope from Adventure Time.
Oh my God.
But it's called Meat Hope. He founds this company,
Let me know.
I know, right? In 1976.
Okay.
So Meat Hope grows pretty quickly. It's more focused on supplying and producing meat products.
Okay.
His sons also eventually join the company. It becomes this sort of family business.
Right.
They join the company as executives, so they sit on like the board.
Oh, so they're sitting pretty, living the good life.
Yeah. Pretty much. But it's like fully like family controlled.
Right.
In 1995, Tanaka decides to hire a man named Kirku Akahane as his managing director.
Okay.
Okay. So Akahane himself has kind of an interesting career in the lead up to his time at Meat Hope. Following his graduation, he worked in the Ministry of Justice's Legal Affairs Bureau.
Okay.
And then he went and worked for Sankyo Saiki Manufacturing, where he worked his way to the head of the sales department before becoming a managing director at Sanwa Industries.
Wow, girl boss.
So, right. Yeah. So he was just like, also corporate ladder
Yeah, I was
climbing.
going to say, they're climbing.
No kidding. So in 1978, Akahane was working as a managing director of Noburibetsu Prince Hotel.
Okay.
As well as a general manager for like a couple of the hotels that were under that umbrella company before retiring at the age of 60.
Not too shabby.
So he retires at 60, but retired. Are your parents retired?
yes.
Retired people.
Yeah.
They're sometimes like, well, I still want to do stuff.
They cannot sit down.
No.
It is so funny.
Like, you
They're
work all your
so
life to do
busy.
nothing. Just do nothing.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you mean you have plans?
Maybe that will change when I retire, if I retire. But like, that's
No.
like 50 years from now. So
Audience, if you haven't gleaned by now, I'm a Taurus. If I retire, I'm laying down. Don't ask me for shit.
if I retire, I'm dead.
yeah,
Just
that's it. I'm just
leave me
turning the
there.
lights off. The end.
So he retires at 60. And at that point in 1995, he gets hired by Tanaka as managing director for Meat Hope.
Okay, so he got a little bored.
Right.
Needed something
Decides to
do.
go back. I'm sure maybe the idea was to do some consulting, but then he just gets hired on as a full
Okay,
managing director.
right.
So while he was there, Akahane was able to use the extensive connections that he had made over the years to expand into other markets and really increase sales.
Okay.
And when I'm saying when I'm talking about other markets, I'm talking about like other areas of the country. So they're kind of localized.
Oh, I see.
And like branching out into
Okay.
other like prefectures, I think is what they call
So
them.
they're no, I don't know the word.
I'm pretty sure it's prefectures.
They're like franchising.
Oh, yeah. Kind
that.
of. Yeah.
I guess that's not the same
Supplying
thing.
people in other areas.
Got it.
Yeah.
So they're spreading out.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
This sounds great so far. I'm like really proud of all these people. I'm like, wow.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
His work primarily took place in like offices
Okay.
and traveling around.
So they weren't like
doing meetings and
packing the
stuff.
meat. They were.
They were,
writing
but
checks.
Hanake was like doing all of the.
Got it.
Or I'm sorry, Akahane was
Akahane.
doing all of the like
Paperwork.
meetings and connecting and making sales.
Business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Business.
Yeah. He's the boss baby.
Exactly.
Got it.
So because of this, he was almost never in the production facility
Right.
and didn't actually get to see like
He didn't want to get his shoes dirty.
the actual meat factory.
Right. Because that sounds gross.
So his role essentially meant that Akahane worked for Meat Hope for many, many years before he discovered that there was extensive fraud happening within the production facility. Having to do with the way that they were preparing specifically their ground meats, it sounded like.
Oh.
Which
Were they
I'll
like
go-
putting sawdust in it and
Well,
shit?
I'll go into detail.
Oh, because I was
in
gonna
it.
say if it was fraud, like money fraud, he would probably know because he's with
You
all
would
the
think.
paperwork.
Right.
But
Yeah,
so
no.
they're doing actual like product fraud,
sketchy meat fraud in
Ah.
the factory.
not the meat hope.
Right, not the Meat Hope.
I had hope for the meat hope.
But I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll go into more detail in
Got
that. in a minute,
it.
yeah. So once it was discovered, he kind of like caught on
Yeah.
at some point. Akahane says that he attempted to sort of resolve the issues internally. Like
Okay.
he went directly to Tanaka and was like, hey, this is happening. Went to the board and was
Right.
like, what's this all about? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But again, because it was pretty much like run by the family members, they
They were
pretty
like,
much,
"Get the fuck outta here."
Yeah, his complaints and warnings were pretty much
Yeah.
ignored.
Yeah. They were like, nuh-uh.
Yeah, exactly. So Akahane then tried to alert the government and government agencies by filing anonymous complaints at various agencies,
Wow.
including Tomakome's Health Center, the city's school lunch center, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries, and the Hokkaido District Agriculture Office.
Wow. All this guy knows how to do is climb ladders. He's just going up, 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 up.
Well, he's trying.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, you guys should probably check this out. You guys should probably check this out.
Which was good of him to do.
But it didn't really look like there was any movement on any of these complaints, really.
Wow.
Through him just like submitting it, because he was submitting it
Well,
anonymously.
that's right, without like his pull.
Right,
That kind of
right.
sucks.
So he tried for a while to affect some sort of change, but after pretty much getting no results, he decided to resign from his position at Meet Hope in April 2006.
Oh, wow.
Interestingly enough, this is like the same month that Tanaka, the president and CEO, is awarded the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology Commendation for Innovation for helping develop a process that could uniformly mix red meat and fat in ground beef. It was like revolutionary. He did end up giving that back later.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know. Spoilers.
Great.
But yeah, he ends up giving that back later. But so Akahane leaves and Tanaka's like,
I'm getting the award.
give me an award. Yeah.
Wow, shady.
Yeah.
I hope it was shaped like a little meat, like a little steak. Like the award.
A little steak on
I'm picturing like an Oscar, but instead of like the guy, it's like a little like chicken leg. Like,
That's so funny.
That's so
Oh
cute.
my gosh. So
it probably wasn't.
it probably wasn't.
That makes me sad.
No, I might have been a medal.
But the medal could be shaped like a little chicken nugget.
I don't know. Or maybe just a certificate. Maybe just with a gold leaf stamp.
Maybe it's scented. Maybe if you scratch it, it smells like bacon.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. So Akahane resigns. Following his resignation, he decides he wants to go super public with this information. So he takes a sample of the meat that he was claiming to be fraudulently labeled.
Okay.
To the MAFF office in Hokkaido to request that they test it and investigate.
Okay.
At that time, they refused to test it, but they did alert the national MAFF office, who did ultimately investigate.
And that kind of makes sense because it's like, they don't know this guy. You know, he could have brought it in from anywhere.
Well,
you know?
and part of it too was that even though they were based locally, because they were distributing somewhat nationally throughout Japan,
right,
that it was a national office like jurisdiction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
there
they
was
were
part
like,
of that
take this
too.
meat elsewhere, sir. Actually, leave
Correct.
it here. I did not bring lunch. Thank you so much.
I don't care what's in it.
Yum,
It's
yum,
fine.
yum.
Yes.
I eat Taco Bell. It can't be much worse than that.
So they do take the meat and investigate it. And people within the company decide to start resigning after they hear about Akahane blowing the whistle on this meat production. And they decide, it was like one right after another from Meat Hope, they decide to go to the news media one after another, hoping that complaining to the media of these fraudulent practices would help, saying we've pretty much been ignored to this point, and sort of backing up Akahane's story. So even with that, they were still pretty much ignored.
Oh, my, really?
Yeah, until a news outlet called Ashi Shimbun began its own investigation into the alleged meat fraud. They took a sample of the company's frozen beef croquis, which is like it's basically a croquette. I don't know if you've ever had a croquette. They send it for DNA testing.
Okay.
The results come back showing pork, chicken, and other meats that were not beef.
What?
Proving meat fraud.
Meat fraud.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So they were just like throwing
They were
whatever.
like, this is ground beef. But then they were just putting
whatever in
it.
Wow.
So there's this Meat Hope subsidiary. There were kind of like a bunch of subsidiaries under like the Meat Hope umbrella, right? They began their own internal investigation and discovered that it was no accident that other meats had made it into the beef croquet, but rather intentional.
Well, you would hope so.
Right. And so they have these findings. They're putting them out in the newspaper. Obviously, the story is like picking up quite a bit of steam at this point.
Right.
And Meat Hope was forced to have a press conference to address all of these allegations. Now, as you would expect, Tanaka showed up to the press conference and said, this was all an accident. This hadn't been done intentionally. It seemed to me like they were acknowledging the results that were provided, but that he was just like, but it wasn't on purpose. We didn't know.
Right.
So that's what he was sticking to. He denied any responsibility for the mislabeling.
He's like, ladies and gentlemen, my bad.
Yeah. And mixing the meats, he was like, sorry.
Whoopsies.
Following the press conference, Tanaka's eldest son has a conversation with his father that's like, maybe you should just come forward
Right.
and tell the truth,
Right.
which I find kind of interesting. Like, come on, Dad.
Yeah. Dad, come on.
Nobody's believing you. Why you always lying? Yeah, nobody's believing you.
Dad, be so fucking
So Tanaka once again goes on TV and fully admits to personally participating in meat fraud.
Oh my God. Well, his son really got through to him.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So there is this formal investigation that happens. It reveals that there was quite a bit more going on at Meat Hope than just this mislabeling of ground meats.
Oh my God.
So they were mixing pork, chicken, pork innards, and bread scraps into their ground beef and then sending it to shelves labeled 100% beef.
What?
In addition, they also added blood to enhance the color.
Ew.
And another mixture of like a bunch of additives for flavor.
Gross.
Flavor enhancement.
Yo, people got allergies. That is messed up. I'm
Yeah.
surprised like more stuff didn't come forward about people getting sick. Because people have like pork allergies and stuff. That's like common.
Yeah, it's not great. And there's certain like religious practices.
That's what I was
for
just about
instance,
to
who are
say.
like you can't consume certain
people who
types
are
of meat
halal
at
and
different.
stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
oh my gosh, that's horrible.
it gets so much worse.
Why the fuck did they do that?
It save money. Then you don't have to put as much actual beef in your product.
So it is metaphorically like they're stuffing it with sawdust. They're doing the sausage thing where it's like, what's in it? Shut up.
Because they're also talking these pork innards. These are like
like the
organ
cast-offs.
meats that you wouldn't use and like
I
they just like grind them up and put them in.
Okay. I wasn't
Using the process that he got an award for.
Right. He's like, I did it. Meanwhile, he's putting like his shoes and like a rat and like all this other stuff.
Yeah,
Ew.
it's literally the Pink Floyd video of them walking into the meat grinder.
Laid out.
So it gets so much worse
Oh
than that.
no. Why?
Meat Hope also used expired meats as well as meat that had been returned by customers for one reason or another.
They're like, my ground beef tastes like pork. And they're like, fucking weirdo.
Yeah, they would just remove the labels from the returned meat and then ship it back out to the customers. Yeah. Yep.
Ew.
Yeah. And the expired meat that came back, it would be mixed with offal, which is a term I had to look up.
Isn't that like guts?
Yeah, it's like the
That was in
internal
Until Dawn.
or internal meats. Yeah, that's a word I've never heard before, but that's
Yeah.
what it is. So they would take the expired meats, mix with
zhuzh
the
'em up.
offal, and they would make restructured steaks. Now, Meat Hope was also importing poultry from Brazil and labeling it as a domestic product.
What?
Which is
El Pollo?
not great. El Pollo, not domestic.
Oh my God.
And they were falsifying documents showing salmonella was found in sausages that were then sold to school lunch firms, who then provided the meat to elementary and junior high schools.
Oh my God.
They were using rainwater to thaw frozen meat,
Stop it.
amongst many other
Rainwater.
fraudulent practices.
They're like, all right, everybody, roll all the meat outside. We're
Yeah.
supposed to get a couple inches.
We gotta
What
have
the
this thawed by
fuck?
tomorrow.
Those kids are hungry. Ew, that makes me so mad.
Yeah. I can't remember if I put it in here or not, but there was a company in the U.S. that was using some of the meat from this plant.
Oh, great. Well, that's
it
not
wasn't like a
surprising.
huge one, but it's one that's known. I can't remember what it is, though.
I probably
we'll
have
see if
them
it's
my
in here.
freezer.
Hopefully, they told you by now because this
I
was
hope so.
like 2006. It would explain so much. No. So yeah, they had some really sketchy.
That is disgusting.
sketchy. Things
What happened
going
to the hope, the meat hope that started this whole thing?
on. Hope in name, not hope in practice.
It's a misnomer.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's so gross.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty
Ew.
bad. It's pretty bad.
Well, I'm hoping that they all go to jail.
So through all of this, Tanaka continued to publicly blame other people.
Of course. He's like, guys, come on.
Yeah, he
didn't do that.
He pretty much blamed everybody else. He denied responsibility after admitting to everything on TV
Yeah.
also. But he did apologize for making people worried about their food.
Yeah.
He's like, now people have to be fearful of like
Right.
what they're buying at the grocery store.
Because you're putting like whatever in it.
Yeah. An
disgusting.
MAFF report following their investigation showed, quote, 417 tons of ground beef were sold as approximately 10,000 tons of products. Most of this was croquettes. Approximately 300 companies were involved in manufacturing, sales, and distribution, and 19 companies were responsible for labeling products for general consumers, which are subject to quality labeling obligations under the JAS Act, which is like Japan's false labeling act. Now, amidst the scandal, Meat Hope files for bankruptcy in the summer of 2007. They had a total debt of approximately 670 million yen, which is close to $400,000.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds like more.
Yeah.
But $400,000 is still,
I don't have
for
that.
debt is like
A lot.
a lot. Now, at some point, Tanaka steps down as president and is eventually arrested by police for his role in the meat fraud under the Unfair Competition Prevention Law.
Meat fraud.
It's a thing, man. It's a thing. Now, finally, Tanaka is sentenced to 4 years in prison.
That's it?
4 years. Now, according to the ruling, quote, labeling minced meat mixed with pork, chicken, etc. as 100% beef on 327 occasions between May 2006 and June 2007, and sent charges to more than 10 business partners. Approximately 138 tons were shipped. He also sold about 100 tons to 3 companies, including Kadokichi, Hokkaido, and defrauded them of a total of about 39 million yen.
Whoa.
End quote. Yeah.
Oh my God. That's like the other side I'm not even thinking about is like not only you're falsifying the product, but you're selling it to people and then taking that money.
Because they're like providing meat to
Right.
companies that then turn that into meat products.
Yeah.
So they turn it into the reconstructed steaks or the croquettes or the whatever.
So it's really like a bunch of different kinds
and
of
a lot
fraud.
of those
That's
were like
interesting.
subsidiaries of Meat
Right,
Hope.
right.
But they didn't necessarily know that was the
course.
product they were getting in.
Oh, right. They're not like examining it.
Well, they should have been.
That's true.
There's part of me that feels like, and I'm sure we have different regulations and stuff in the U.S., although I know a lot of them are not that great, but like,
Yeah, especially now.
yeah, but like, I like to assume, I want to assume, let's say, I really want to assume that there is some sort of testing being done on the meat to be like, this isn't like horse, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and you know what? I'm not going to look it up.
No,
because
I don't
I'm just
want to
going to
know.
keep assuming that it's fine.
I don't want to
that
know.
everything I've eaten, that was exactly what it was.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I do not want to know.
I mean, I've had Chef Boyardee, so who knows?
Right. Exactly. So there was a little bit of fallout for the whistleblower, Akahane.
Really?
Yeah. So the timing for him coming out as a whistleblower couldn't have been better because his resignation happened about the same time that Japan had passed the Whistleblowers Protection Act. So they had just strengthened some protections for whistleblowers, which allowed him to use his real name when he was coming forward with the information, which was kind of important due to his position within the company.
Right. So they take him seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
He was frustrated, however, with the lack of action when he first started reporting it to the agencies. Like before he came out, he was like, I don't understand why none of this, like there was no action on this at all.
Yeah.
Even after he started using his real name and trying to contact like the news agencies and stuff, he was largely ignored. And it wasn't until that investigation by Asahi Shimbun that everyone else in the media started paying attention, which
that's a shame.
At that point, like Akahane was then unwillingly sort of thrust into the spotlight.
Right.
And there were a ton of news outlets that were just reporting on his day-to-day life, which he really felt like was an invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he wasn't doing it for the notoriety or the fame or whatever. He was just like, this is what's going on. People need to know about it.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, he's this sort of celebrity in the media.
Meat Hope.
He's the Meat Hope. Yeah. So he also had these extra worries that he was going to be perceived as culpable in the whole thing. And because he had worked for them for so long,
Been having those wonders myself.
before he found out about it, because he didn't spend any time in the factories.
Which is fair.
Right. And I do think, I mean, I can see how you would be like, why would you work for a company for so long? And then, you know, if you're working there for
But if it's like the
8 or
other
10
side of it,
years,
he's doing the corporate side,
Right.
it makes sense that he wouldn't really know.
right. So he was, when he first came out, like really worried that people were going to blame him on some level.
Understandable, I feel.
In some of the interviews in recent years, Akahane has openly said that if he could go back and do it again, he would have never blown the whistle on Meet Hope because the experience has been absolutely fucking miserable.
Oh, wow.
I get the impression that in Japan, whistleblowers are not necessarily the most favored by the public. And so there's also this media harassment and like having to constantly validate the things that you're saying. And, you know,
I've heard the press is really aggressive there. Not that it's not here, but I've heard it's like a big deal there.
Right. So I get where he's coming from, but he's like, I would, if I could go over and do it again, I wouldn't because it's terrible.
Yeah. It's like, but you did help people though.
Yeah.
At least there's that.
Right.
He gave me Meet Hope to go on another day.
The Meet Hope I needed when I needed it. Now, in case you are curious on how common meat fraud is.
Oh no, I wasn't.
Or this type of fraud. This is according to the FDA.
Oh, gross.
Quote, outside experts have found that food fraud affects 1% of the global food industry at a cost of about $10 to $15 billion a year.
What?
Although some more recent expert estimates have put the cost as high as $40 billion a year. Yeah. Some common examples include honey and maple syrup being mixed with cheaper sweeteners.
What?
Olive oil being diluted with less expensive vegetable oil.
I've heard of that one.
Seafood being labeled as like other more expensive. I've heard of that. Like more expensive species that go for higher prices. Juice being labeled as 100%, even though they're mixed with other things.
Sketchy.
And spices being mixed with non-spice material for bulk or like using dyes to alter the color of the spices that you're putting in the jar.
Ew.
Is like the most common stuff.
I hate that stuff, like dyeing the food. That's so like, I know they do that, but it's so like weird and dystopian for me. I'm like, I'll still eat it.
It is. And there's a lot of cases where like spices have been mixed with stuff that people are allergic to. And I think it's primarily when you're talking about spice mixtures, like if you got Italian seasoning or like,
man, I got a
you know what I
bunch
mean?
of
Like, yeah, which I'm sure most of them are probably fine, but like, you know, I definitely have, I'm sure, paprika that has been fully fucking dyed.
Oh, that's
you
true.
know?
Like electric red paprika. It's like
right.
Did you know paprika is just ground up red pepper?
No.
That's what it is. Oh. Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
now you do.
So that is the story of Meat Hope.
How disgusting. Thank you.
And the largest, I'm pretty sure it's the largest meat fraud in Japan.
Wow. And he only went to jail for like 4 years, huh?
Yeah. But his company went bankrupt. So
well, that's good.
There's that.
I think he should have been like, they should have made it so he had to be a vegetarian afterwards.
Rude. But I feel like in Japan, that's like,
oh, that's
not,
true.
You know what I mean?
That's
in America,
common.
that would be like, what? But in Japan, I feel like that's
true.
Just kind of a thing
That's
they'd
fair.
be fine with.
Dang, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you picked this week's topic, I was like, gross. Because I know you love corporate crime, but my problem is, like we were talking about earlier, I just don't understand all of the terms.
I mean, that last story was really fun, wasn't it?
It was.
It's great.
I loved it. And it was good because you explained the terms to me. But like, I just, man, these make me confused. But
I'll help you out as much as I can.
Yeah, we're just gonna see. So, on that very positive note.
Just so confident. I can feel the confidence emanating.
That's kind of why this story stood out to me, because even though a lot of like the things that this guy was doing, these criminal charges, some of them I was like confused. I was a little confused. The story behind it is so funny that I was like, okay, I don't care. I'm just going to go into it. I love it so much.
All right.
So this is the story of Marcus Schrenker.
Schrenker? Okay.
Have you heard of him before?
I have not.
Okay, because this one's a little more like recent. This is like 2010s.
Okay. Schrenker.
Yeah, Schrenker. He's like a very like weird looking guy.
Okay.
So,
now I'm gonna Google image search him.
Yeah, he's got an interesting face.
Marcus?
Yeah.
Schrenker. Oh, I see.
Yeah. So he was born. He doesn't. Yeah, he's just kind of like he kind of blends into a crowd.
I feel like he looks like a lot of the husbands on Real Housewives.
Yeah, just kind of like a guy. He's just
a
Ken.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just Marcus.
He's just Ken. Faking his death and stuff for fun. So Marcus Schrenker, born
oh my God,
November 27th, 1970. This one day in 2009, he's just January 10th, 2009, sorry. Okay. He is having a delightful time flying his very expensive aircraft.
Of course, as you do.
As you do. That's how I got here. Flew my very expensive aircraft.
Oh, that's what that is in the driveway. Okay.
Yeah, I valet parked it. So he's just taking a nice, relaxing flight when all of a sudden the local Coast Guard gets a distress call from his airplane. And he's reporting that all of a sudden his windshield has shattered and he's covered in blood. He's hurt very badly, and he can be heard screaming on the distress call that his vision is obscured, he can't see, and just not having a good time. Not something you want to happen on a leisure flight.
Yeah, not a planned activity.
Right. So since they're the Coast Guard, they deployed two military jets to go and intercept because, and I don't know, I'm assuming they can toss him a parachute or whatever, or
like a net attached to two planes.
But that's what I think. That's probably it. Or like put a mattress on the ground.
Or just like one on top, one on bottom, and steer him down to the ground.
Plane witch.
Is the plane witch the safe move?
Oh my! I hope so. We never get to find out because as they approach the aircraft, which is still in the air, they look and they see the cockpit is dark and empty, and there is no one inside.
Okay.
And as they're looking, because they automatically assume like, okay, he must have gotten panicked and parachuted out to safety. That's fine.
Right.
But then they're looking and the window is not even broken. The airplane is in perfect condition.
Okay. That's sus.
Right. So they're nearby the Gulf of Mexico. So their fear was that the plane would go into the water. But the plane crashed in a nearby wooded area.
I guess part of me is like, wouldn't you want it to crash in water and not on land?
Yeah.
If potentially someone is in it?
Well, that's the thing. They knew no one was in it, so I think they more wanted to be able to
look around
it. Because it kind of seems like a bitch to have to scoop the plane out of the ocean.
I guess that's true.
That's like your whole afternoon.
I'm thinking safety-wise, if there's a person, I'm like, why would you want it to crash into a bunch of fucking hard trees?
That's true.
Versus, I guess, slightly softer water.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, isn't water from on impact feet, isn't harder. It like concrete?
I don't know.
It just don't crash your plane.
I'm not a scientist.
I'm not a plane scientist. So obviously, they went and investigated the fallen aircraft, and what was funny was I read in the article they were like, the window's not broken. I'm like, it wasn't broken after it crashed into the woods, but
it's Gorilla Glass window.
Right? I guess so. But they could tell somehow that there was no blood inside the aircraft, and there had been no kind of engine failure, and that the plane had been on autopilot.
Okay.
When it crashed.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So their question then is, where is Marcus.
Where is Marcus? Where are you at?
Where is Marcus? So before we find him, let's go into
we don't give a shit about you, Marcus.
Yeah, fuck you, Marcus. Let's go back into Marcus's life. Who is Marcus, and why does he have this expensive airplane? I'm
because he's
literally
rich?
Gonna tell you, right?
Is it because he's rich?
But why is he rich?
Oh,
because he's a dick.
Okay.
So
I just accept that.
A lot of his early life is like kind of unknown.
Okay.
He will tell some stories later, but are they verified? No.
Right.
But we do know that he grew up in Maryville, Indiana, and attended Purdue University, where he met his wife, Michelle.
Okay.
He lived with his wife and 3 children in a huge $1 million waterfront house in a wealthy suburb of Indianapolis. This house is ginormous. It is so ugly, but it's like a castle. It's like ridiculous. Like I feel like these days 1 million doesn't sound like that much because the housing market's so fucked.
Oh God, no.
But like it's ginormous.
Yeah.
This was like prior to 2009.
Is it just opulent for no reason?
Yeah, it's like big and ugly.
Like excessive for no reason.
Yeah, a lot of brown stone.
Blech.
It's like a big old boulder.
I live in a boulder.
He owned that big expensive plane, and he had a Lexus as well. So
Okay. I mean, there's fancier cars than a Lexus.
I don't know about cars either. So
I don't
I'm
know
like,
too
I'm
much
sure
about cars,
that's
but I
nice.
know about the cars that wealthy people drive.
Well, that's
because they're
true.
not the ones I'm driving.
Same.
Just saying.
Me and my Dodge Start.
Yeah. Pulling up to work.
Living the
I'm
dream.
parked next to this guy who drives an Alfa Romeo into
Oh
work
my
every day.
God.
And I'm like,
You're like, wah, wah.
all right. You don't have enough to pay for your own parking spot. So
You're like,
here
my
you
car
are.
has adjustable cup holders.
Yeah. Well, he's parking with the peasants up in the top of the parking garage. So that's all I'm saying.
He lives in like a cheap apartment.
Yeah, probably is. Or
There's
he
a
lives
guy-
in the car.
There's a guy who lives on our by our street who like the house is like not nice at all, and the car is like it's some like insane. What does Barbie drive?
A Porsche?
No,
A Barbie car?
it's like a. It's
Is it the Barbie
it's a sports
Jeep?
car. It's like some I don't remember. It's a brand name. I just don't remember what it
Okay.
is. It's not a Cadillac.
Like
but
a
it's
Mustang?
no, damn it.
Okay.
Whatever.
We can do this
But
all
it's
day.
like this really fancy car
Yeah.
with like a shitbox house.
Of
So I'm
course.
always like, why? Whatever.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Whatever. So obviously, Schrenkner and his wife and 3 children in their big, ugly $1 million lakefront house with their Lexus and their plane are just like living the high life. And he is a very successful business owner. He was listed as the owner of 3 companies.
Okay.
Heritage Wealth Management, Inc., Icon Wealth Management, and Heritage Insurance Services, which were all listed at the same address.
So they're all financial companies, financial space.
And this was where I started losing the plot a little bit and getting confused as to like what he did for a living. One article helpfully told me that it was similar to an insurance agent.
Yeah.
So he's calling people and like pitching financial plans. So he was pretty successful at that for a while. That's kind of where he started. It kind of sounded, have you seen Wolf of Wall Street?
No.
Well, in the beginning, before he gets successful, he's working in this like tiny little office and he's calling people and trying to sell like penny, like whatever stocks. But he has the idea to start selling big stocks for less. And it's like this like landmark idea. And he's basically frauding people.
Yeah.
Like lying to them.
Yeah.
It's the same deal with this guy.
Okay.
Isn't
that like short selling or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This took me and
Yeah.
I'm sure we're gonna get comments like, that's not how this works. I know. I'm doing my best. I did a lot of Googling. Okay.
Listen,
And I did watch
I'm a
Wolf of Wall
paralegal and
Street.
Rachel is a mom. So like I don't know we don't have financial. I have a financial advisor because I don't know anything about it.
Fancy.
I have since I was like
My
25.
husband's my financial advisor.
Yeah. I mean
he does my taxes.
Your husband is also my insurance agent.
We keep it in the family.
He's the
We're just like
best.
Meet Hope.
Yeah.
We just the people
Keep it in the family.
So that was his deal is instead of like when he was working at his sales job, it would take like 100 calls to generate a sale. He was
Okay.
like in the trenches, but he got this idea to start kind of misrepresenting and selling to big companies. And how he accomplished that was by calling these airports, these big airports, and doing business with them. But unfortunately, he would tell them, you can trust me because I'm a trained pilot. I was like in the Air Force and I graduated like valedictorian at this. And he didn't. He was an amateur pilot.
Okay.
He was never a veteran. He did graduate Purdue, but I think he would say that he did more, like that he had more degrees than he did.
Yeah.
So he was totally lying. So these airport, and I guess this was interesting to learn. I guess with pilots, it's kind of like a brotherhood.
Yeah.
Not to sound like sexist. It's like everyone knows each other because it's such a small collection of people. So a lot of the interviews I read, they were like, we really trusted this guy because he had all of this knowledge.
Yeah.
Because he knew how to fly planes. But he was fucking lying.
Oh my God.
So he was frauding these people. He was stealing from these people. He also had an airport to keep his big fancy plane, and the purchase of that airport was fraudulent. The purchase of the airplane was fraud. He was just like fucking lying and stealing from people and being a dick.
Oh my God.
So in around 2009, his perfect life started crashing down.
Ruh-roh.
Right at the end of 2008, his wife filed for divorce because he had been having an affair with the woman at the airport that he had. Which I'm like,
God,
why there? She knows where it is. Like
super greedy.
Right, you're dumb.
At the one where he had his personal airplane.
Yeah, his airport.
So he could just say,
"Yeah,
I'm going flying."
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Skis.
Yup.
What is skis?
Joining the Mile High Club.
Yeah.
A stinker.
While driving the plane?
I mean, why not? It had autopilot, as obviously he'll come to know.
That's true. Good point.
So December 30th, his wife filed for divorce. The next day, his Indiana State Financial Advisor license expired. And all three of his companies, they got a warrant for like financial fraud and stealing. So it's like your wife files for divorce and now you're under suspicion for fraud. And then in January...
Bad couple months.
Yeah, not a good holiday season.
Oh my God, that's true. That is right over the holidays.
He's like wearing like a sad Santa hat, like drinking eggnog, like crying. Like, yeah.
The Charlie Brown.
Oh my God, that's like the most depressing Christmas thing ever. Blue Christmas.
Oh God.
Then at the beginning of January, the Indiana Department of Insurance filed a motion to revoke the license of his companies and fine them, citing a string of complaints from clients, some charging that he forged signatures and withdrew investment money, causing large surrender penalties. One of the other things he was doing is while he was selling these financial plans to these airports, he would form personal relationships with these pilots who a lot of the time were not like old, but they were older than he was.
I mean, it takes a long time to become a pilot.
Right.
Like a commercial pilot.
Right. And pilots are really smart, but like he really took advantage of them and he would convince them to sign over their retirement plans to him. And he'd be like, no problem.
Oh, to invest?
Yeah. Okay. And so he would invest in, big, ugly brownstone houses and planes for himself.
This is that is a really common practice with a lot of
is it?
Like financial fraud in this vein when you're talking about like financial planning. Yeah, that's what they do a lot of time. They'll be like, give me your money. I'll invest it for you. We're getting all these high returns because then you doctor books to show like higher returns than what you're actually getting. And you use that money to cover other expenses on other investments.
He's just spreading everything around everywhere. Playing fast and loose with everybody else's cash. What a dude.
This is why I can't do it. It's because it gets too complicated for me.
See,
I'm like, I can't keep track of all of that.
No.
There's too much money moving around to like...
I know. Like the amount of like organization. Like I'm always surprised with these cases that they don't fall through quicker.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time it's like one person, like maybe with a couple other people, like pushing everything around.
But the average person doesn't necessarily know all of these things, right? So it's not strange for somebody to be like, I'll invest your money. And when they say, oh yeah, no, everything's all good, blah, 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 blah. Like because I don't have the knowledge necessarily, I am slightly more inclined to believe whatever they're telling me.
That's fair.
You know?
And I mean, that's exactly what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
He seemed like, everyone said he seemed like such a straight shooter, like such a smart guy, and he was a dick.
Oh, God.
So during all this time, he knows he's getting in trouble. He got cited on January 9th, ordered by a Maryland court to pay a Maryland insurance company, let's see, $533,000 for issues also related to commissions.
Wow.
And he learned that he was under investigation by the FBI at this time.
Ooh, boy. Okay.
8 lawsuits had been filed against him, like in like his 10 years of business, and it was just kind of all crashing down. So some of these lawsuits included things like interfering with a business relationship, slander, and one of his homes, because he had many homes. I'm just focusing on the biggest, ugliest one. He hired a contractor and didn't pay him.
Oh my gosh.
So he's just like so it sounds like he's losing control at this point.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like it had become too much for him to handle.
Yeah.
So on January 10th, this is the day after that he was ordered to pay this court this insurance company $500,000.
Okay.
Next day, he gets in his pickup truck, puts his red Yamaha motorcycle in the back, and takes a leisurely little drive to Harpersville, Alabama. Went to a storage facility, placed his motorcycle in the storage facility, and told the owner, yep, I'm just going to come back on Monday and get it. I just have to store it for a little bit. Don't even worry about it.
Right. Okay.
So then the next day, January 11th, 2009, I'm going to read the name of this airplane because it's fancy. He took a little trip in his turboprop single-engine Piper Meridian from an airfield in Indiana.
Okay.
Scheduled to fly to Florida. But then near Alabama, Harpersville, Alabama, he called traffic control and was like, help, my windshield, ooch, ouch, the glass. And then he put the plane on autopilot and parachuted out.
It still is like, wouldn't you know that they would look at it? Or is he hoping that it would break in the crash?
He was hoping that it would go into the Gulf.
Okay.
So it's really close. I'm bad at like geography.
Yeah.
So like I had to look at a map, but it's like where he was really close to the water. And when the plane crashed, it was only a couple of miles away from the Gulf.
Because I'm like, that is...
He got unlucky, I think.
need a checkable lie, and that when you can like...
Right. I think if it had gone into the Gulf, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But I think he parachuted out.
Interesting. Okay.
He's dumb. He's dumb.
Oh, gosh. I don't disagree.
This is what, maybe he really should have become a real pilot, and then he would have fucking known these things. But instead, he decided to be a liar.
Oh, yeah.
So he parachuted to the ground, ended up being fine, wandered over to a regular house, private residence in Childersburg, Alabama. Appearing wet from the knees down, he was like, hey, what's up, guys? I was in a canoeing accident and I was with my buddies and my canoe tipped. It just happens. It just happens to people.
You just left it?
Yeah. And they were like, oh, okay, we'll take you into town. So they take him to the police station, which... like, you'd think you wouldn't have gotten into the car with them at that point, but they didn't they didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
At that point, it wasn't like a huge thing yet, I guess. Like,
there's part of me that's like, I feel like if that happens, you would call the police to come to you.
Right.
Not take them, but I guess it depends on the area. Maybe.
Yeah, it sounded like, because it was like a wooded area, it sounds like it might have been like a little backwoodsy. It is Alabama.
Gotcha.
So the police brought him to a hotel. Just because they're like, well, if you're separated from your friends, you need somewhere to stay the night. He had cash. He paid for the hotel under a false name. When the police returned later to be like, let's get this all sorted out for you, he was gone. I just imagine him calling the front desk, like, help, the hotel window exploded and I'm covered in blood. He just runs out the door.
Oh, my God.
So then he walked to the storage facility where he had stored his motorcycle, picked that shit up, and then went to he drove to Florida to a campground. I think it was like one of those like KOA campgrounds.
Oh, the KOA.
Yeah, I used to work next to one. Oh my God, fun times. No, I'm just kidding. I hate them. He wouldn't give his name, but he told the owner that he was traveling cross country with friends. And this is my favorite part. Using cash to purchase a one-night tent site, firewood, and a 6-pack of Bud Light Lime.
Ooh. Bud Light
like
Lime.
lime. It's not even a good beer. He also bought the campground's Wi-Fi. You know, gotta have Wi-Fi.
Sure. Let's make it really easy to track you
Oh, he's gonna make it even
by
easier.
logging on to the fucking Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
my
he's like
God.
tweeting and stuff. He also emailed his neighbor, whose name is Tom Britt, and he was like, "Oh my God, all that stuff that happened, such a misunderstanding. But I'm down here because I'm like really embarrassed and I don't want to come home. But like, don't even worry about it. But I'll likely be gone by the time you read the email. So whether he meant like I'm gonna
like dead
end it,
Yeah.
or not." We
or
don't
like
know.
be gone like out of the country
Right,
or
right.
like disappeared into the wind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The world may never know. So luckily, Tom Britt just immediately gave it to the police. Didn't waste
good.
any time. He was like, I feel like, because he was his neighbor, and I read a couple of reports from like people who lived by him that said he was like the shittiest neighbor ever. He was so mean.
Yeah.
Like he was like Karen neighbor. So I'm sure he was like, fuck this guy. Okay,
Well,
yep, here he is.
Of course, he, I'm sure, has been seeing on the news all
Yeah.
of the stuff about the lawsuits.
That's
and to just
like
be
what
like,
dreams
no.
are made of. Your shitty neighbor gets arrested. It's like, oh, I will tell you where he is.
Yeah.
Ain't no problem.
Yeah.
He's like, can you take my recycling out? You're like, no problem, Mr.
No,
Schrankner.
no problem. 911. Yeah.
So then on January 13th, the officials swarm the campground because they know where he is because he's an idiot and he's on Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So they're looking for him. They find his campsite. This idiot did not even get a real tent. He got a dog tent. He was
Oh
in a
my
pup
God.
tent, but the tent was covered in blood. It was a
Oh.
big spray of blood. So they find him in the campsite. He had slashed his wrist and had attempted to end his own life, but they got him to the hospital.
Whoa.
Before.
Okay.
Yep. So he was semi-conscious. They got him to the hospital. U.S. Marshal Assistant Chief Deputy, which is a lot of titles.
Yes.
Frank Chiumento said that Schrankner wasn't able to speak very clearly. A lot of the words he was speaking were unintelligible, but he mentioned die at least 2 times as we were providing medical treatment to him.
Okay. Well.
Yep. So they got him to the hospital and he was fine.
Okay.
He's fine now. And then he was charged in Hamilton County, Indiana, with 11 counts of unlawful acts by a compensated advisor and unlawful transaction by an investment advisor.
Okay.
What would you think like a bail would be for something like that?
I would hope it would be in like 1 million bail.
They were not fucking around. The judge was so worried about him like
He's already
doing
fled
other
once.
shit,
Yeah.
right? That it was $4 million.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
Okay.
So June 2009, Schrankner pleaded guilty to federal charges of destroying an aircraft, which I think is really funny.
The airplane, yeah.
So the airplane was owned. I didn't know that Harley Davidson made planes. So I don't know if it's like a company that they own, but
Could
he
be.
ended up having to pay restitution to Harley Davidson. He had to pay them like $870,000 because he broke the plane. Oh, it says
was he like renting it from
the plane's lien holder. That's what it said. Okay, so ignore everything I just said. Never
So
mind.
he no. I mean that makes sense because that means he hadn't like paid off the plane.
Right.
It's like intentional destruction. Also, it is super illegal to intentionally crash a plane. There is because there was that guy who did that. I'm pretty sure it was in the US. He was doing it for like a YouTube video or like a Twitch stream or
that's
whatever.
right.
And jumped out of the plane and filmed the plane crashing into like a canyon and got arrested by the FBI.
Well,
because
of course.
you can't do that.
Yeah, that's like kind of dangerous.
it's like
You're like
putting-
flying a bomb.
Right, and potentially putting other people at danger.
course.
You could be destroying national landmarks or like whatever the fuck.
Now
you
there's a
know?
plane-shaped crater in that canyon, like Looney Tunes. That's
like Looney Tunes. Yeah,
I'm just imagining
exactly.
like a perfect plane cut out.
Yeah.
He also had to pay the Coast Guard $34,000 for wasting their
Reimbursement.
fucking time.
Reimbursement. They use jets to come after you, so it's a little bit more expensive than like an ambulance.
I will say, so I was surprised because as I read all of these things, especially with corporate crime, and they're like, you have to pay this person this much and this person this much. I'm like, this guy has no money. Like, what is the point of this? And none of these people have gotten their money.
No.
There was a really sad interview with one of the guys that he defrauded. His like grandfather was a pilot, and he was like, they were both closely linked. Like, he was helping him with his finances and stuff. And he was talking about how like they lost everything.
Yeah.
He stole like $30,000 from them. It was really sad. And like, they're really the victims in all this. Like, fuck this guy losing his house and, marriage and crashing his plane. Like, it's really sad.
In those cases, that's when they do things like selling off assets and stuff to try to recover some of it.
They did that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a drop in the bucket.
But it is largely symbolic. And frankly, like, you don't have to start paying on those things until your appeals are entirely done. So even if you are getting some sort of monetary compensation that you are in fact going to receive, like, it could be many years before you start seeing a payout from that.
That's
because
crazy.
You have to wait for a person found guilty to go through the appeal. Like, they have a right to an appeals process, right? So like,
that makes me mad.
Yeah. I mean,
lawyer talk.
Yeah. I mean, it is upsetting for the people who are owed money and can't get it quickly.
I mean. Like,
the appeals process is a necessary evil.
No, I totally get the appeals process. And like, if the person didn't really do it, I understand. But I wish there was some kind of like other program for people who were owed money where it's like,
if there's like a set aside fund,
that's what I
something
mean. And
on
I think
a state by state basis, like, and one for federal crimes, but like, that's what I think. I think like you should get your money right away, and then they have to reimburse the government. Yeah,
like,
I hear you. And I think I think on a state by state basis,
I think there are certain foundations that do that.
There are places that are like have a separate set aside fund for specifically like financial fraud crimes.
Right.
Maybe, but it's definitely not like, at least here, not a national program.
I think it should be.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Because that makes me mad. So August 2010, he pled guilty to 5 counts of security fraud.
Okay.
He was set to spend 10 years in prison and pay his victims of his schemes more than $630,000.
Okay.
He was then released 5 years later on 25th September 2015. And that's it.
Okay.
That's it. He doesn't have any money, so he's not going to pay anyone back. His super hot wife, Michelle, divorced him and took the kids.
Yeah.
He later tried to blame her and say that she made him do all of this. Like, this dude is a really shitty, compulsive liar.
I mean, the thing now is he's never going to have a career in financial anything ever again.
And so for a little while, because I was looking like, okay, well, where is he now? And it looked like he was maybe working in real estate, but he started doing interviews. There was an interview from like 3 months ago on YouTube where he where he's just like, I did this, and he goes back and forth between saying, I did do this and I didn't do this and Michelle made me do this. Like, when he was in prison, this is a really interesting, I'm not going to go into it too much because it's going to be too long, but he was in prison with a lot of other guys who were also con men.
Okay.
And one of the guys, a major con man, like met him and ended up interviewing him and writing a book. And he did confess to some things, but then when the book was published, he tried to sue him and say that he made it up and he'd never talked to him. Like, it was pretty crazy. But the interviews with the guy who interviewed him, who himself is a con man and a criminal, it was like a New York Times like best-selling book. It was really, really interesting.
Wow. Wild.
But so that guy sucks, and he's free to do whatever he wants, even though he owes so much money to innocent people who trusted him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I hate that guy. So that's Marcus Schrenkner.
It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Good job, Rachel.
I liked the plane crash.
Yeah. I knew that's what drew you to this one.
I'm like a man with a movie. I'm like, is there a car chase or a plane crash in it? And then I'm excited about it. That's what I had to do. So apologies for probably getting all of those terms wrong. I don't understand.
Nah, it was good. So before you decide to start defrauding your company, maybe don't.
Yeah, maybe don't do that.
But check out this podcast.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Margot P. And this is Margot D. And we are the Margos.
We are the Margos, co-hosts of the Book versus Movie podcast. We are the podcast that talks about films that are adapted from books. We read the book, we watch the movie, and then we decide which we like better, the book or the movie.
Now I know what you guys are going to say. Duh, the book is always better than the movie. To which we always reply, have you ever read Jaws?
Read Jaws? We are not film experts or literary geniuses.
Nope, we're just two friends who like to chat about books and movies.
We really like to go for a deep dive into the history of the book and the background of the author and the trivia from the movie set.
And most of all, we just like to have fun, so we never take ourselves or the books or movies too seriously.
You can find us wherever you sign up for your podcast under the name Book versus Movie.
And on social media, you can find us at Book versus and Movies. You just spell it all out.
Hope you check us out soon.
All right, Rachel, that has been our episode.
It sure has.
Another one in the books. We don't really have any announcements. I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts for this one?
It's definitely made me more interested in like corporate crime. I just have to get
it can be really interesting. There's like rabbit holes that you can.
And I am definitely a rabbit hole thinker,
you
so
are.
I'm into it. I just need one of those. Did you ever, when you had to like read Shakespeare in high school, did you ever get those side-by-side books where it would translate it into like dumb person language?
Yeah.
I need that for these.
Yes. Yeah, I get that. I am your sidebar.
Love it. Love it. You're promoted. You are promoted.
Oh, well, on that note, our sound and editing is by Tiff Fullman. Our music is by Jason Zakshevsky, the Enigma. This has been the Bad Taste Crime Podcast. We will see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway. It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all people in some form or another.
Oh my God. Fraudulent meat.